Hello there, and welcome to the Sleep with Science channel, where tonight we are going to do something that has never quite been done before. We are going to leave. Not just the room you are lying in right now, not just the city humming softly beyond your window, not just the warm blue marble of Earth turning slowly through its endless orbit. We are going to leave all of it behind, together, and drift out into a place so vast, so achingly quiet, so incomprehensibly old, that the very concept of distance will begin to lose its meaning somewhere along the way. So settle in. Let your body sink a little deeper into whatever is holding you right now. Feel the weight of the day begin to dissolve from your shoulders, from your jaw, from the space behind your eyes. Breathe in slowly, and breathe out even slower. Because where we are going tonight, there is no rush. There never was. Time out there does not tick the way it does here. It stretches. It bends. It pools in the darkness like something ancient and patient and utterly without end. Tonight, we follow a traveler. Not a person. Not a spacecraft in the Hollywood sense of gleaming corridors and blinking lights and the hum of engines. What we are following is something far more humble, and because of that humility, something far more profound. A small golden machine, roughly the size of a school bus, launched from a Florida launch pad on a September morning in 1977, back when the world was younger, when the universe felt a little smaller, when no human-made object had ever even considered touching the edge of what we call the solar system. Its name is Voyager 1. And it is out there right now, as you lie still and the room darkens around you, as your breathing grows softer and your thoughts begin to loosen their grip. Voyager 1 is still moving, still transmitting, still alive in the most extraordinary, quiet way imaginable, sailing through a region of space that no probe before it had ever reached. A region beyond the sun's protective bubble, beyond the last whisper of solar wind, beyond the boundary that scientists call the heliopause, the place where our star's influence finally, after billions of miles, simply runs out. Voyager 1 crossed that threshold in 2012. And what it found on the other side was not silence, exactly. It was something stranger than silence. Something that, when translated into sound, when the plasma wave instruments aboard that tiny golden machine converted the data into frequencies the human ear could perceive, produced a tone so low, so resonant, so otherworldly, that scientists who heard it for the first time sat quietly for a long moment before they spoke. We will get to that sound. We will travel toward it together, slowly, the way Voyager itself traveled. Not in a blaze, not in a rush, but with the quiet, unstoppable momentum of something that simply keeps going because there is nothing out there to stop it. But first, we need to understand where we are starting from. We need to feel the scale of this journey in our bodies, not just our minds. Because the numbers alone, the miles, the astronomical units, the light years, they slide off the brain like water. They are too large. They were never meant to be held by a species that evolved measuring distance in footsteps and river crossings and the width of a hand. So instead, imagine this. You are floating just above the surface of the Earth, high enough to see the full curve of it below you, that impossible blue and white and brown sphere wrapped in its thin, trembling skin of atmosphere. You can see the Terminator line where day meets night, that slow shadow edge rolling across continents. You can see weather systems turning like vast, lazy pinwheels over the oceans. From here, the Earth looks almost gentle, almost manageable, almost like something a mind could hold. Now pull back. Let the Earth shrink beneath you. Let it become a marble, a dot, a pale suggestion against the black. Let the moon swing into view, that gray and cratered companion that has been circling us for 4.5 billion years, its face always turned toward us, patient and unchanging as an old friend who never speaks but never leaves. The moon is roughly 250,000 miles away. That distance, 238,000 miles, felt, for most of human history, like the absolute edge of the possible. the outer wall of everything we could ever hope to reach. Voyager 1 passed that distance in about 10 hours after launch. 10 hours. And then it kept going. Through the asteroid belt, past the great banded giant of Jupiter, past the magnificent rings of Saturn, past Uranus and Neptune and the cold scattered objects drifting at the solar system's far edges, and still it kept going, into a darkness so complete, so unimaginably deep, that the sun itself, seen from that distance, would appear as nothing more than the brightest star in a sky full of stars. Not a source of warmth. Not a giver of light. Just another point of light in an ocean of points of light, indistinguishable to the naked eye from 1,000 other suns scattered across the darkness in every direction. Let that settle for a moment. Let it really settle, the way a stone settles slowly through deep water, turning gently as it descends, catching what little light remains before it disappears into the dark below. The sun, our sun, the great burning heart of everything we have ever known, the thing that pulls the tides and grows the wheat and warms the skin and marks the passing of every single day in all of recorded human history, reduced, by distance alone, to a pinprick. A suggestion. A memory of warmth in a place that has never been warm and never will be. This is where Voyager 1 lives now. Not visits. Not passes through. Lives. This is its permanent address, if something that is always moving can be said to have one. Right now, as your eyes grow heavy and the sounds of the world outside begin to blur and soften at the edges, that small golden machine is approximately 14 billion miles from the sun. 14 billion. The number sits in the mind like a word in a language you almost speak. You can feel its shape, you can sense its weight, but it refuses to fully resolve into something the heart can hold. So let us try another way. If you were to drive a car at highway speed, say 65 miles per hour, steady and unbroken, no stops, no sleep, no hesitation, it would take you roughly 26,000 years to reach Voyager 1. Not days. Not years. Thousands of years. The entirety of recorded human civilization, from the first scratched symbols in Mesopotamian clay to the screen glowing in your pocket tonight, would not be enough time to make that drive. You would need to begin before the pyramids were dreamed of, before the wheel was invented, before agriculture changed the shape of human life forever, and you would still not arrive. And yet Voyager got there. It got there because space, despite its terrifying emptiness, offers something that Earth never quite can: the freedom of uninterrupted motion. Out there, there is no friction, no air resistance, no gravity strong enough, at those distances, to pull meaningfully at something already moving. Once Voyager was set upon its path, it needed no engine to continue. It simply went. It simply kept going. The way a thought, once released into the quiet just before sleep, keeps drifting and deepening and carrying you somewhere you did not consciously choose to go. There is something almost meditative about that. About the idea of an object moving through absolute darkness at roughly 38,000 miles per hour, silently, continuously, with no destination in the traditional sense. Voyager 1 is not heading anywhere in particular. There is no planet waiting for it at the end of some calculated line. The nearest star system to our own, Alpha Centauri, that distant glimmer roughly 4 light-years away, Voyager is not even headed in that direction. It is moving through interstellar space on a trajectory that will carry it past a different star, a dim red dwarf called AC plus 793888, in approximately 40,000 years. 40,000 years from now, this machine that human hands assembled in a California laboratory will make its closest approach to another star. And even then, it will not stop. It will keep going. Into what, exactly? That question used to have a simpler answer. Into nothing, scientists might once have said. Into the void. Into the vacuum between stars, which is as close to true emptiness as anything the physical universe contains. A region so sparse that a cubic meter of it holds only a few atoms, compared to the many billions of atoms packed into a cubic meter of the air you are breathing right now, moving through your lungs, carrying oxygen to the quiet work happening in every cell of your body. But here is what Voyager taught us, slowly, patiently, across decades of listening. Interstellar space is not nothing. It is not silent in the way we imagine silence. It is not inert. It is not a simple blank page between the written lines of stars and planets and moons. It is a medium, a thing with texture and behavior and, in its own strange way, a voice. A low, droning, almost imperceptible voice that hums at frequencies far below the range of human hearing, generated by the movement of plasma, ionized gas, electrically charged particles, drifting through the vast space between stars like a slow, invisible ocean with currents so wide and so gradual that they make Earth's own oceans look like puddles. Voyager's instruments felt those currents. The plasma wave science instrument aboard the spacecraft, designed originally to study the magnetospheres of the outer planets, repurposed by distance and time into something no one had quite planned for, began detecting oscillations in this interstellar plasma. Vibrations. Waves moving through the medium the way sound waves move through air, though calling them sound feels almost too small, too familiar, too earthbound a word for what they actually are. They are something older than sound. They are the voice of the space between stars, a voice that has been speaking since long before the sun ignited, since long before the solar system condensed from its spinning cloud of gas and dust, since long before there was anyone or anything capable of wondering what it meant. A voice that requires no listener to exist, that has been resonating through the dark between stars with perfect indifference to whether anyone ever heard it or not. And that, in its own quiet way, is perhaps the most humbling thought of all, that the universe has been speaking for billions of years, and we only just recently, with our small golden machine and our careful instruments and our patient ears, learned how to listen. But listening, it turns out, changes everything. There is something that happens to a person, and perhaps you have felt this yourself, in some quiet moment when the noise of daily life fell away unexpectedly and something deeper became briefly audible. There is something that happens when you truly listen to something vast. Something that dwarfs you completely. The mind does not panic, as you might expect. It does not recoil from the scale of what it is encountering. Instead, something in it softens. Something releases. As though the smallness you suddenly feel is not a diminishment but a relief. As though being reminded of how large everything is around you makes the weight of your own particular concerns feel, for just a moment, appropriately sized. That is what interstellar space does, if you let it. That is what Voyager's journey offers, if you are willing to follow it slowly enough, quietly enough, with enough willingness to simply float rather than steer. And so we float. Together, in the dark, in the quiet. Your breath rising and falling like the gentlest of tides. The room around you growing softer at its edges, the ceiling above you dissolving by degrees into something much larger than a ceiling, into the open and endless dark of a sky that does not stop at the atmosphere, that does not stop at the orbit of the moon or the orbit of Mars or the cold outer reaches of the solar system, but continues outward without interruption, without wall or ceiling or boundary of any kind, for distances so immense that the word distance itself begins to feel inadequate. Voyager 1 has been traveling for more than 46 years now. 46 years of unbroken motion through the dark. It was launched in September of 1977, and it has not stopped moving for a single second since. While you were born, while you learned to walk and speak and read and love, while you accumulated every memory and experience and relationship that makes you the particular, irreplaceable person you are right now, while all of that was happening on the warm and spinning surface of this small blue world, Voyager was out there. Moving. Listening. Sending back its quiet data across a distance so vast that the radio signals it transmits, traveling at the speed of light, take more than 22 hours to reach us. 22 hours at the speed of light. Light, which moves at nearly 186,000 miles per second. Light, which can circle the entire Earth 7.5 times in a single second. That light, moving at that speed, requires more than 22 hours to cross the distance between Voyager 1 and the antenna dishes on Earth that receive its transmissions. And those transmissions, when they arrive, carry a signal so faint, so unimaginably attenuated by the vast distance it has crossed, that it arrives with less power than a single snowflake landing on the ground. Less power than it would take to illuminate the smallest, dimmest light bulb you have ever seen. And yet we hear it. And yet our instruments catch it and amplify it and translate it into data that scientists can read and study and marvel over. There is something quietly miraculous about that. About the stubbornness of connection across impossible distance. About the refusal of that signal to simply give up and dissolve entirely into the background hum of the cosmos. It keeps coming. Faint as a whisper in a hurricane, improbable as a candle flame in the middle of an ocean, and yet it keeps coming, 22 hours of travel through the cold and dark, arriving at last at the curved white dishes of the Deep Space Network, in California, in Spain, in Australia, like a message slipped under a door from the very edge of the known world. And the message it carries, among all the other data, among all the measurements of magnetic fields and cosmic rays and plasma density, is that sound. That low, resonant, deeply strange oscillation in the interstellar medium that Voyager's instruments first detected after the spacecraft crossed the heliopause and entered true interstellar space. That voice of the space between stars, translated into something the human ear can perceive. Astronomers call the phenomenon plasma oscillations. They are caused by events, powerful bursts of energy from the sun, called coronal mass ejections, that travel outward through the solar system and, even at Voyager's extraordinary distance, eventually reach the spacecraft and disturb the surrounding plasma, setting it ringing like a vast, invisible bell struck by an invisible hand. The plasma responds. It oscillates at a frequency that sits, when converted into audio, in the range of a very low, steady, almost meditative drone. Not a dramatic sound. Not a sharp or frightening sound. Something more like a tone held by an enormous instrument in an enormous hall, resonating in the chest more than the ears, felt as much as heard. Something that, when you close your eyes and simply allow it to move through you without trying to name it or categorize it or fit it into any framework you already possess, feels less like listening to something external and more like remembering something internal. Something very old. Something that has always been there, beneath the noise of daily life, beneath the hum of traffic and conversation and thought, waiting patiently for a quiet enough moment to make itself known. And tonight is that quiet moment. Right now, as your body grows heavier and your mind begins its slow, beautiful drift toward the borderland between waking and sleep, we are creating the conditions for exactly that kind of listening. Not with instruments. Not with antenna dishes pointed at a distant sky, but with the oldest and most reliable instrument any of us possesses, the simple, extraordinary human capacity to be still, to stop moving, to let the noise settle and the breath slow and the ordinary world recede just far enough that something larger can come into focus. This is what sleep does, in its own way. This is what happens every single night when consciousness loosens its grip on the details of the world and allows the mind to expand into something less defined, less bounded, less insistent on knowing exactly where it begins and ends. Sleep is its own kind of interstellar space, its own region beyond the familiar boundary, beyond the heliopause of waking thought, where the rules change slightly and the medium through which you move becomes something richer and stranger and harder to describe in the plain language of daylight. Voyager crossed its heliopause in August of 2012. The moment was not immediately obvious, even to the scientists watching the data. There was no single clean instant where the instrument said, clearly and unambiguously, "Here is the line. Here is where the solar system ends and interstellar space begins. Instead, the crossing revealed itself gradually, through accumulating evidence, through changes in the density and temperature of the surrounding plasma, through shifts in the direction of the magnetic field, through the behavior of cosmic rays arriving from outside the solar system suddenly becoming more numerous and more consistent. It was less like crossing a border and more like slowly becoming aware that the landscape around you has changed, that the light is different, that the air carries a different quality of stillness, that you have, without quite noticing the precise moment of transition, arrived somewhere genuinely new. How many of the most important crossings in a life feel exactly like that? Not marked by ceremony or clear demarcation. Not announced. Just a slow accumulation of difference that one day resolves into the quiet recognition that you are no longer where you were. That something has shifted, not dramatically, not with fanfare, but in the deep and structural way that real change always moves. Underneath, gradually, with the patience that the conscious mind, always hungry for clear narratives and clean beginnings, rarely gives it credit for. Voyager did not know it had crossed. Of course it did not know. It carries no consciousness, no awareness, no capacity for wonder at its own position in the cosmos. And yet there is something almost poignant about that. About a machine traveling farther than any human object has ever traveled, crossing the most significant threshold in the history of space exploration, and doing so in complete and perfect ignorance of what it has achieved. The knowing belongs entirely to us. To the scientists in Pasadena who studied the data for months before announcing their conclusion. To the engineers who built the instruments that made the detection possible. And now, in this quiet moment, to you, lying still in the dark, breathing slowly, carrying in your mind the extraordinary fact of a small golden machine drifting through interstellar space while the rest of the world sleeps. There are roughly 8 billion people on this planet tonight. Most of them are asleep, or moving towards sleep, or lying in that soft suspended state between the two, much as you are now. 8 billion individual minds, each one a universe unto itself, each one containing a lifetime of memory and feeling and private experience that no other person will ever fully know. And of all those 8 billion people, only a small fraction are thinking right now about Voyager, about interstellar space, about the plasma oscillations moving through the medium between stars like slow ripples across an ocean with no shore. Only a small fraction are letting their minds expand to hold, however briefly, the true scale of the space through which that golden machine is sailing. You are among them. And there is something about that, something I want you to hold gently as you continue to drift deeper, something about the fact that the universe is so vast, so ancient, so incomprehensibly large, and yet here you are, a conscious being on a small warm planet capable of knowing it, capable of sending a machine to its edges and listening to what it hears, capable of lying in the dark and feeling something move in your chest when you contemplate the distance between a California launch pad in 1977 and the endless cold of interstellar space today. The cosmos did not have to make creatures who could wonder at it. And yet here we are, wondering. Here you are, in the particular stillness of this particular night, with the particular weight of your particular body pressing softly into whatever holds you, and your mind reaching outward, gently, without effort, the way a hand reaches toward warmth without being told, and that reaching, that quiet, involuntary gesture of the mind toward something larger than itself, is perhaps the most extraordinary thing about being alive. Not the achieving, not the arriving, but the reaching. The willingness to extend awareness beyond the known edge and let it rest there, in the dark, in the not yet understood, without panic, without demand. Just presence. Just the soft, alert openness of a mind that knows it does not know everything, and finds, somehow, that this is enough. That this is, in fact, more than enough. That the not knowing is itself a kind of gift. Voyager knows nothing of this, of course. It carries no wonder of its own. It does not feel the cold. It does not feel anything. And there is something almost tender in that, in the fact that we built a machine incapable of awe and sent it to the most awe-inspiring place we could imagine, so that we, the ones who do feel, the ones who do wonder, could receive what it finds and feel it on its behalf. We outsourced the journey to something that cannot be moved by it, so that we could be moved entirely. That is what Voyager is, in the end. Not an explorer in any conscious sense. A messenger. A nerve ending. A long, thin filament of human curiosity stretched across 4.5 decades of silence, still transmitting, still faithful, still sending home the faintest possible signal from a place no human body has ever been and likely will not reach within any lifetime you or I can hold in our minds. The signal itself, and this is worth sitting with, worth letting arrive slowly, travels at the speed of light. The fastest thing the universe permits. Nothing moves faster. Not thought, not imagination, not love, though we sometimes feel those things as though they might. Light itself. And still, that signal takes over 22 hours to reach us. 22 hours for a beam of electromagnetic energy, moving at 186,000 miles per second, to cross the distance between Voyager and the quiet rooms where scientists in Pasadena sit and wait for it. 22 hours at the speed of light. Let that settle somewhere in your body the way a stone settles slowly to the bottom of still water. Let it go all the way down. When you exhale right now, slowly, without hurry, by the time your next breath has fully filled your lungs and released again, the signal you imagine sending to Voyager would have barely left the neighborhood of our sun. The distances involved are not distances that human language evolved to carry. They exceed us. They were here before us and will remain long after the last of our transmitters falls quiet, long after the last human hand turns the last dial and listens one final time for the voice of something sent into the dark. But Voyager is not quiet. Not yet. In interstellar space, and understand that Voyager entered true interstellar space in 2012, crossing the heliopause, that boundary where the solar wind finally loses its push against the pressure of the galaxy. In that space, the plasma is different. Denser. Older. It has never been touched by our sun's breath. It is galactic material, the kind that drifts between the stars without allegiance, without direction, accumulating slowly over billions of years in the spaces between things. And when disturbances occur, when the sun releases a coronal mass ejection, a great shuddering pulse of charged particles that travels outward for over a year before reaching Voyager, that pulse strikes this interstellar plasma and causes it to ring, to oscillate, to produce a tone. A tone. In space. In the place we were always told held only silence. The frequency falls between 2.6 and 3.8 kilohertz. If you were to hear it, and recordings exist, made from data returned by Voyager's plasma wave instrument, transposed gently into the range of human hearing, it sounds like a hum. A long, low, wavering hum that rises slightly in pitch as the plasma grows denser in certain regions. It sounds, to some ears, like wind across wires. To others, like a tone held too long in an empty room. To others still, like the edge of a frequency a choir might produce in the very last moment before silence. It does not sound like nothing. It sounds like something that has always been there, just beyond the edge of what we were able to hear, waiting patiently for us to build something sensitive enough to notice it. And Voyager noticed it. 40-some years into its journey, still faithfully doing the thing we asked it to do, it pressed its instruments against the fabric of the galaxy and sent back the news. There is a hum out here. There is something that resonates. The interstellar medium is not mute. It has a voice, if only we choose to call it that. If only we are willing to listen in the way that listening requires, with patience, with stillness, without the expectation that what we hear will be familiar. You know something about that kind of listening. You are doing it right now, in a way. Not to the galaxy, perhaps, but to the space between your own thoughts, the medium through which they travel, the quiet that surrounds each word and gives it room to arrive. That kind of listening is not passive. It is a form of attention so refined it becomes almost physical, a tuning of the whole body toward something faint and essential, the way the ear of a careful listener tilts almost imperceptibly toward a sound it isn't sure it heard. That is where you are right now. That is the particular quality of attention that this hour asks of you. Not vigilance, not analysis, just the open, receptive stillness of a mind that has agreed, for a little while, to stop reaching for conclusions and simply let the distance speak. And the distance does speak. That is the thing. That is the thing that the scientists who work with Voyager's data will tell you, quietly, if you ask them in the right way. Not in metaphor. Not in poetry, though it becomes poetry the moment it leaves their mouths. In data. In waveforms. In numbers that describe oscillations in plasma that no human eye has ever seen and no human hand has ever touched. The interstellar medium vibrates. It responds to disturbance the way all things respond to disturbance, by moving, by shifting, by finding a new frequency that describes its new condition. The universe, it turns out, is not still. Even in the deepest and most remote places we have yet been able to touch, there is motion. There is change. There is something that behaves, under the right conditions, like sound. Let that be a comfort if it can be. Let the fact that even the void has a frequency settle into you the way warmth settles, gradually, without announcement, until you realize you are no longer cold and cannot say exactly when the change began. Voyager 1 is, as of the time these words were written, more than 15 billion miles from the Sun. The number is almost useless to the imagination. It arrives in the mind and finds nowhere to land, no existing structure to attach itself to, and so it simply drifts there, acknowledged but not felt. This is one of the quiet challenges of thinking about space, that the mind, which evolved to track prey across a savanna, to judge the distance to the next handhold on a cliff face, to estimate whether a friend is close enough to hear a whispered word, this same mind is now being asked to hold 15 billion miles, and it cannot. Not really. Not with the full weight of genuine comprehension. But the body knows something the mind does not. The body knows smallness. The body knows it every time it stands at the edge of the ocean and feels the water arrive from somewhere beyond the visible horizon. It knows it in the particular silence of a clear night when the stars are many and the air is cold and the darkness above is not flat but deep, layered, receding in every direction into distances that have no end the eye can find. The body knows that it is small, and it does not, in that knowing, always feel afraid. Sometimes, and perhaps you have felt this, sometimes it feels something closer to relief. As though the vastness grants a kind of permission. As though being small inside something incomprehensibly large means that the weight of being a self, with its worries and its histories and its unfinished business, is briefly lifted. Distributed. Dissolved into the larger dark the way a breath of warm air dissolves into a winter night. Not gone, but no longer separate. No longer lonely in quite the same way. Voyager travels through that darkness at roughly 38,000 miles per hour. It has been traveling at roughly this speed since 1977. It will continue traveling at roughly this speed, with no engine burning, with no fuel expended, because there is nothing out there to slow it down. No atmosphere. No friction. No resistance of any kind. The laws of motion, left entirely to themselves, simply continue. The object set in motion remains in motion. Newton's first law, holding faithful in the interstellar dark, as it has held faithful since before Newton, since before the first human eye opened on the first human morning and found the world already in motion around it. There is something deeply calming about that. About the idea of a law that does not need enforcing, that does not require maintenance or renewal or belief, that simply is, and has always been, and will continue to be in every corner of the observable universe without exception or negotiation. The same rule that keeps Voyager moving through the space between the stars kept the stars themselves moving into their positions across the early universe. The same rule governs the slow rotation of galaxies and the gentle arc of a stone dropped from a height into still water. The universe runs on patterns. Ancient, consistent, indifferent to whether anyone is watching, and yet somehow made more beautiful by the fact that, here on one small world, something did begin watching. Something looked up and noticed the patterns and felt, in the noticing, something that does not have a simple name. You are that something. Right now, in this specific moment, in the exact warmth and weight of wherever you are lying, you are the part of the universe that looks at itself and finds it worth looking at. You are the feedback loop the cosmos developed, over billions of years of expanding and cooling and colliding and combining, to become aware of its own dimensions. And that is not a small thing to be, regardless of how small the body that holds it feels against 15 billion miles of measured silence. The Voyager team at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, a group that has grown older alongside the mission, some of them having spent entire careers in the quiet company of this one small spacecraft, will tell you that working with Voyager feels, after all these years, less like operating a machine and more like corresponding with something. Like maintaining a relationship across an almost incomprehensible distance. The signal arrives, faint beyond measure, and they read it the way you might read a letter from someone who left a long time ago and has been traveling ever since. Not with urgency. With a kind of careful, practiced tenderness. With the particular attention of people who understand that each transmission may eventually be one of the last, and who have made a quiet peace with that, and who show up anyway, day after day, to listen. The antenna that receives Voyager's signal is part of NASA's Deep Space Network, a system of enormous dish antennas positioned at 3 locations around the Earth, spaced roughly equidistant in longitude so that as the planet rotates, at least one antenna always faces the direction of the spacecraft. Goldstone in the Californian desert. Madrid in Spain. Canberra in Australia. 3 great ears pressed to the fabric of the solar system, listening continuously, patient as stone, waiting for the whisper of a transmitter no more powerful than a refrigerator light bulb, arriving from a distance that defeats ordinary language. And they hear it. Reliably. Still. After nearly 5 decades of listening, they still hear it. There is something in that image worth dwelling in, worth letting expand slowly inside you as your breathing deepens and your body releases another fraction of the weight it has been carrying. 3 dishes, turning gently with the Earth, aimed at a point in the constellation Ophiuchus where no star is close and nothing shines, and from that point, arriving without fail, the faintest signal the human species has ever tracked across the longest distance the human species has ever bridged. We built something patient enough to hear it. We built the ears, and then we built the craft, and then we waited, and the waiting was rewarded, and is still being rewarded, and will continue to be rewarded for some number of years yet remaining before the last of Voyager's power fades and the signal stops and the silence becomes permanent. That silence, when it comes, will be its own kind of profound. Scientists estimate that Voyager 1's radioisotope thermoelectric generators, the devices that convert heat from decaying plutonium-238 into the small amounts of electricity that power the spacecraft, will no longer produce enough energy to operate any scientific instruments sometime around 2025, give or take the particular pace of decay, the particular draw of each remaining system. And after that, the transmitter itself will eventually fall quiet. The exact year is uncertain, but the direction is not. There will come a day, not very far from now in the long arithmetic of space exploration, when the last signal travels the 22-hour journey to Earth and arrives, and is received, and is the last. And after that, Voyager will continue moving, will continue its patient, frictionless passage through the interstellar medium, but it will do so in silence. Unreachable, unreadable, An artifact drifting through a darkness it cannot report on, carrying a golden record no one in the foreseeable universe is positioned to find. Let yourself feel the full weight of that for a moment. Not as sadness, exactly, though sadness is a reasonable response and you need not set it aside if it comes, but as something more layered than sadness. As the particular feeling that arrives when something beautiful is also finite. When the thing you love is also temporary. When the signal, however faint, is still a signal, and you are still here, in the particular darkness of this particular night, still able to receive it. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, everything. The ability to receive. The willingness to be here, awake enough to feel the transmission of the cosmos moving through you, even as you drift closer and closer to sleep. Because sleep itself is a kind of interstellar travel, in its way. The mind uncoupling from the familiar gravity of the waking world and moving outward into territory that does not follow the same rules. Into spaces where time behaves differently and distance means something other than what it means in daylight. Where the self becomes permeable. Where the edges of a thing blur gently until the thing and the space around the thing are no longer cleanly distinguishable and it no longer seems important to distinguish them. You know this territory. You have been there every night of your life. And tonight, as Voyager moves through its own unmapped and borderless dark, you will go there again. Following the same ancient instruction that every living thing that has ever existed on this planet has followed. Let go. Release. Allow the transition. Trust the other side of it. The golden record aboard Voyager, that copper disc plated in gold, encoded with sounds and images and music and mathematics, sealed against the cold and the radiation and the vast indifferent time of interstellar space, carries, among its many contents, the sound of a human heartbeat. Someone in 1977 made the decision to include it. To say, this is the rhythm that underlies everything else we have sent you. This is what it sounds like to be alive on the planet that made this object and placed it here and aimed it outward and let it go. This is the sound at the center of everything we know how to love. A heartbeat. 60 to 100 times a minute, depending on the body, depending on the moment, depending on whether the person whose chest holds it is running or resting, frightened or calm, newly in love or very old and nearly finished. A heartbeat. The most ordinary sound in the world, if you are alive. The sound so constant, so thoroughly beneath notice, that most people go entire days without remembering it is happening. And yet someone, in the long and careful process of deciding what the human species would say to the universe if given one opportunity to speak, chose that. Chose the sound of a living body doing the one thing a living body must do to remain living. As if to say, before the mathematics, before the music, before the images of mountains and oceans and human faces looking upward, before all of it, know this, we had hearts. We were the kind of thing that had hearts. And the hearts kept time. Yours is keeping time right now. Quietly, without your direction, without your supervision, without any conscious effort on your part at all. Somewhere beneath the weight of whatever covers you, beneath the rise and fall of your breathing, your heart is doing what it has done every moment of your life without once asking for acknowledgement. And tonight, in this particular stillness, it is doing something that a heartbeat recorded in a laboratory in 1977 is also doing. In its way, it is being carried outward, through the dark. Not on a golden record, perhaps, but through the medium of this moment, through the strange transmission of attention and imagination that connects a listening body on a small warm planet to a spacecraft older than most of the people currently alive on Earth, moving through a silence so profound it has no name in any human language. There is a piece of music on the golden record called Flowing Streams. It is a Chinese guqin piece, ancient and extraordinarily delicate, played on a 7-stringed instrument whose sound exists at the very edge of what the ear can comfortably hold. Not loud, not insistent, but precise in a way that feels almost spatial, as though the notes are not so much heard as located, placed carefully in the air at specific distances from the listener. It was recorded and encoded and sealed inside a gold-plated copper disc and fastened to the side of a spacecraft and launched into space, and it is out there right now, in the dark beyond the heliopause, moving through the interstellar medium at 38,000 miles per hour, in a silence so total that the music it carries exists only as pattern, only as information, only as the potential of sound waiting for ears that may never come. And yet it was sent. The sending was the point. The intention behind the sending was the point. Someone believed it was worth doing. Someone believed that the act of reaching outward with beauty, even toward a silence that might never be broken by the right kind of listening, was itself meaningful. Not instrumentally. Not because it would certainly produce a result, but because the reaching was what beings like us do, what beings like us have always done, pressing our most carefully made things into the darkness and releasing them without guarantee, without assurance of return, with nothing but the stubborn and luminous faith that beauty sent is not beauty wasted. You may have done this yourself, in ways smaller than a spacecraft, in distances shorter than 15 billion miles, but in the same essential spirit. Every time you have said something true to another person without knowing whether they were ready to receive it. Every time you have made something, a meal, a letter, a gesture of unexpected kindness, and released it into the uncertain space between yourself and another without controlling what happened next. Every time you have loved something without any guarantee that the love would be returned in the form you hoped for. That is the golden record. That is the same motion. That same open hand, releasing into the dark, trusting the dark to carry it somewhere worth arriving. The Voyager spacecraft carries one other thing worth knowing about tonight. As your body grows heavier and your thoughts grow softer at the edges, and the boundary between your waking mind and the deeper country of sleep begins to thin and shift and lose its definition. It carries a pale blue memory. Not literally, not as data or image or encoded information, though the image does exist, was taken, was received, and is one of the most quietly devastating photographs in the history of human vision. But as a kind of inheritance, as the photograph that changed, for a great many people, what it felt like to know where they were. On February 14, 1990, at the request of Carl Sagan, flight controllers sent a command to Voyager 1, then approximately 3.7 billion miles from the Sun, to turn its camera backward. To look, for one last time, toward home. The camera, which had not been used in years, which was never designed for this kind of portrait, which was pointed at a region of space so filled with scattered sunlight that the image would be difficult and imprecise, that camera turned. And it looked. And what it saw, suspended in a beam of scattered light, was a dot. A pale, barely visible point of color against the vast and velvety dark. A mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, as Sagan would later describe it. A pale blue dot. Those three words. So simple. So insufficient. And yet, somehow, exactly right. Sagan stood before audiences and read what he had written, his voice low and unhurried, the way a man speaks when he has looked at something that has permanently rearranged him. He said that every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species, had lived out their lives on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. He said our planet was a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. He said the Earth was the only world known so far to harbor life, and that there was nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. He said all of this quietly, with the cadence of someone who was not trying to frighten you, but who would not look away from what was true. Voyager 1 took that photograph and then it continued. Because that is what Voyager does. It does not pause. It does not grieve. It does not look back again. It simply moves and moves and moves. Outward. Always outward. Through distances that begin to dissolve the meaning of distance itself. Through a region of the solar system where the sun is no longer the sun as we know it, no longer a source of warmth, no longer a presence that fills the sky, no longer anything more than the brightest star in a field of stars. A cold and distant lantern, receding. And still Voyager traveled on. There is a layer of space, far beyond the planets, beyond even the vast and frozen bodies of the outer solar system, where the solar wind, that constant, invisible breath exhaled by our sun, begins to slow. For billions of miles, that wind has flowed outward in every direction, a stream of charged particles racing at hundreds of miles per second, filling the heliosphere like air fills a room. It pushes against the interstellar medium. It holds back the galaxy. But it cannot hold forever. There is a boundary, a region called the termination shock, where the solar wind collides with the material of interstellar space and slows. Suddenly, dramatically, the way a wave slows when it reaches shallow water. Beyond that, a turbulent and uncertain zone, a mixing region, where the sun's influence and the galaxy's influence negotiate in ways we are only beginning to understand. Scientists call this region the heliosheath. Voyager passed through it. Slowly, over the course of years. Sampling and measuring and transmitting across distances so great that even its signals, traveling at the speed of light, required more than 13 hours to reach us. And then, in 2012, something changed in the data. The instruments aboard Voyager 1 detected a shift, a sudden and unmistakable change in the density and nature of the particles surrounding the spacecraft. The charged particles of the solar wind dropped away. The cosmic rays from outside the solar system surged. The magnetic field shifted its orientation. Scientists studied the numbers carefully, debated, recalculated, and then announced, quietly and with a particular restraint of people who understood the magnitude of what they were saying, that Voyager 1 had crossed the heliopause, the outermost boundary of our sun's domain, the edge of the heliosphere, the threshold between our solar system and the interstellar medium proper. It had entered, for the first time in human history, the space between the stars. Think about that for a moment. The space between the stars. Not a metaphor. Not a poetic approximation. The literal, physical region of the galaxy that lies beyond the influence of any single star. The region that comprises the vast majority of the volume of the Milky Way. The region that, until that moment, had never been touched by anything made by human hands. Voyager 1 passed into it. And it was still transmitting. Its instruments were still reading. Its golden record was still sealed aboard, still carrying its improbable cargo of music and laughter and greetings in 55 languages. Still carrying the sound of rain and surf and a mother's first words to her newborn child. And what did Voyager find there? In that place between the stars? It found plasma. Dense, quiet, relatively undisturbed plasma, ionized gas filling the spaces between stellar systems, drifting at temperatures and densities so different from anything inside our heliosphere that the instruments had to recalibrate their expectations. It found magnetic fields oriented in new directions, lines of force belonging not to our sun, but to the accumulated history of the galaxy itself, shaped by supernovae that exploded millions of years ago, by the slow rotation of the Milky Way's arms, by forces and events so ancient and so vast that the sun's entire 10 billion-year lifespan is merely a footnote to them. It found, in other words, the galaxy. Not the galaxy we observe from Earth, not the galaxy of photographs and telescopes and carefully labeled diagrams, but the galaxy as a physical place. A medium. An environment. A kind of cosmic ocean in which our entire solar system floats like a single bubble, barely visible, barely. distinguishable from the countless other bubbles drifting through that same ancient and incomprehensible dark. And Voyager was inside it now, moving through it, reading it, sending back numbers that scientists translated into understanding, the way a blind person reads texture with their fingertips, slowly, carefully, building a picture from sensation alone. The plasma waves Voyager detected in interstellar space have a sound. Not sound as we experience it, not vibrations moving through air, not something that could reach the ear in any conventional sense, but oscillations in the plasma that, when converted to audio frequencies, when shifted into the range of human hearing, become something undeniable. Something that the mind does not quite have a category for. Scientists at NASA released recordings of these plasma wave oscillations, and people listened, and something happened to them when they did. The recordings are not musical. They are not dramatic in any Hollywood sense. They are quiet and rising and strange, a tone that seems to emerge from nothing and build slowly, like the first light of a dawn that arrives without a sun. Like a frequency the universe has been humming since before the Earth was formed, and which we are only now, for the first time, pressing our ear close enough to hear. There is something about that sound that resists description. Something that sits beneath language, the way deep water sits beneath its surface. You can listen to it in a quiet room, with the lights low and the ordinary world temporarily suspended, and feel something move through you that is not quite emotion and not quite thought, something older than either. A recognition, perhaps. The cells of your body are made of atoms forged in the cores of stars that lived and died before our sun was born. You are, in the most literal and non-metaphorical sense possible, a child of the galaxy. And when you hear the galaxy's own plasma singing in frequencies your instruments have finally learned to translate, something in you, something beneath the reach of words, remembers. Or imagines it remembers. Which may amount to the same thing. Voyager did not only detect plasma waves. Its instruments measured the density of the interstellar medium with a precision that surprised even the scientists who built it. When a disturbance in the sun, a coronal mass ejection, a powerful eruption of solar energy, sends a pressure wave outward through space, that wave eventually reaches Voyager, even in interstellar space, even across those almost incomprehensible distances. And when it does, it causes the surrounding plasma to oscillate, to ring like a bell struck softly in an enormous and empty hall. By measuring those oscillations, scientists can calculate the density of the medium Voyager is moving through. And what they found was that interstellar space is not uniform. It is not a smooth and featureless void. It is layered. It is variable. It has regions of higher and lower density, regions where the material of ancient stellar deaths has compressed and cooled, regions where the slow tides of galactic gravity have gathered matter into subtle concentrations that drift through the dark like clouds too thin to see but not too thin to measure. The universe, at every scale, is more textured than it appears. More intricate. More alive with subtle structure. The emptiness between the stars is not empty. It is full of something, something diffuse and cold and ancient, but something nonetheless. Every cubic centimeter of interstellar space contains approximately one atom. Just one. And yet across the distances we are speaking of, across the light years that separate the stars, that one atom per cubic centimeter accumulates into something measurable. Something that has history. Something that has been shaped by every supernova, every stellar wind, every gravitational interaction that has occurred in this region of the galaxy over the last several billion years. Voyager is moving through that history now. Reading it. Becoming part of it. It is traveling at approximately 38,000 miles per hour. Which sounds fast. Which is, by any human standard, almost unimaginably fast. A bullet travels roughly 1,800 miles per hour. Voyager is moving 20 times faster than a bullet, every hour, without stopping, without slowing, with no friction and no resistance and no destination. And yet the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, the closest stellar neighbor our Sun possesses, is approximately 4.2 light-years away. At Voyager's current speed, it would take roughly 73,000 years to reach it. 73,000 years. The entirety of recorded human civilization spans perhaps 6,000 years. Agriculture is roughly 12,000 years old. The cave paintings at Lascaux were made perhaps 17,000 years ago. Voyager, the fastest object humanity has ever launched into the cosmos, would need more than 4 times the entire span of recorded human history just to reach the nearest neighboring star. And it is not even heading in that direction. This is what interstellar space does to scale. It does not merely expand your sense of distance, it dissolves it. It takes every unit of measurement you have ever used to organize the world and renders it quietly, gently, irrelevant. Miles become meaningless. Hours become meaningless. The frameworks we use to navigate ordinary life, schedules, distances, lifetimes, fall away like scaffolding from a structure that turns out to need no scaffolding at all. And what remains, when all of that has fallen away, is something harder to name but easier, in some ways, to feel. A kind of stillness. The particular stillness of a mind that has finally stopped trying to measure what cannot be measured, and has simply allowed itself to be present inside the immensity. To float in it, the way Voyager floats, without anchor, without urgency, without the need to arrive anywhere at all. There is a meditation that astronomers sometimes describe, not formally, not in papers or lectures, but in the quiet conversations that happen after the instruments are read and the data is filed and the day's work is done. It goes something like this. You begin by imagining yourself standing on the Earth. You feel its solidity beneath you, its familiar gravity, the particular weight of being a body in a place. And then you expand your awareness, slowly, the way dawn expands across a landscape, outward to the moon, then to the other planets, then to the edge of the solar system, then to the heliopause where Voyager crossed into the interstellar medium, then to the nearest stars, then to the broader galaxy, then to the filaments of galaxy clusters stretching across hundreds of millions of light-years, then to the observable universe itself, that sphere of light and matter approximately 93 billion light-years in diameter, the farthest reach of anything we can, even in principle, detect or know. And at every stage of this expansion, you notice something. Not the vastness exactly, though the vastness is always present. You notice how quiet it is, how the scale does not roar or thunder, how the universe, for all its incomprehensible size, conducts itself in something very close to silence. Voyager understands this. Not in any way we would call understanding. It has no consciousness, no interiority, no experience of its situation. And yet there is something instructive about the way it moves. It does not broadcast urgency. Its transmissions are impossibly faint, 22 watts of power, roughly equivalent to a refrigerator light bulb, sending signals across more than 15 billion miles of space. And we receive them. With enormous antennae and careful instruments and the patient attention of scientists who have devoted decades to listening. 22 watts, and we hear it, which suggests something about the nature of attention, about what becomes possible when you are genuinely, completely, unhurriedly listening. The Deep Space Network, the system of large radio antennae stationed around the Earth that maintains contact with Voyager and other distant spacecraft, must account for the rotation of the planet when tracking a signal. As the Earth turns, different antennae take over, passing the contact from one station to the next, from Goldstone in California's Mojave Desert to Madrid in Spain to Canberra in Australia, in a relay that has continued without interruption for decades. The people who manage this network speak of Voyager with a particular kind of affection. Not the affection you might have for a tool, but the affection you have for something that has carried a piece of your life forward into territory you cannot follow. Something that is doing, quietly and faithfully, exactly what it was asked to do, long after many of the people who asked it have grown old or died. Several of the scientists and engineers who worked on the Voyager program in its early years have since passed away. They built something that outlived them. They set something in motion that is still in motion, still transmitting, still moving through the dark at 38,000 miles per hour, still carrying their work and their care and their particular human ingenuity forward into a region of the universe that no human eye will ever directly see. There is a kind of immortality in that. Not the immortality of fame or memory, though those are real in their own ways, but the immortality of action, of something done that cannot be undone, of motion initiated that will not stop for 100,000 years or more, of a presence established in the interstellar medium that will persist long after everything we now call civilization has transformed into something unrecognizable. The golden record aboard Voyager was designed with this in mind. Its creators, Carl Sagan and Andrew Yen, and a small committee of scientists, artists, and thinkers, understood that they were not making something for the near future. They were making something for deep time, for the unimaginable distances and durations that lie ahead of this small spacecraft as it drifts through the galaxy. They chose sounds and images and greetings with the awareness that whoever or whatever might eventually receive them would be separated from us not just by space but by time, by thousands or millions of years of evolutionary and cultural change that would make even our most fundamental assumptions alien and opaque. And so they tried to speak in the most universal language available. Mathematics, music, the geometry of a hydrogen atom, the image of a nursing mother, the sound of wind and thunder and the first notes of Bach. Andrew Yen, who served as the creative director of the Golden Record Project and who later married Carl Sagan, has spoken about one particular moment during the recording sessions. Scientists had decided to include an EEG recording, a reading of the electrical activity of a human brain. Andrew Yen volunteered to be the subject. She sat quietly while the instruments recorded her neural activity, the flickering electrical signatures of her thoughts and feelings, translated into data that could be pressed into gold and carried to the stars. And she thought, during those quiet minutes of recording, about the nature of love. About what it means to be a conscious creature in an unconscious universe. About the fragile and extraordinary fact of awareness itself, that the universe, through us, had developed the capacity to contemplate its own existence, to look at itself with something resembling wonder. She thought about all of this, and the instruments recorded the electrical signature of those thoughts, and that recording was pressed into gold, and that gold was mounted aboard a spacecraft, and that spacecraft is now, at this very moment, moving through interstellar space, carrying the neural echo of a human being thinking about love and consciousness and the improbable beauty of being alive. It is perhaps the most intimate object ever placed in the cosmos. A whisper sent into the dark, not in words, but in the raw electrical language of a feeling mind. There is no guarantee anyone will ever find it. The scientists who built the Golden Record understood this with perfect clarity. The galaxy is unimaginably large, and Voyager is unimaginably small, and the probability of any civilization intercepting it by chance is, by any sober calculation, extraordinarily low. And they sent it anyway. They chose to speak anyway. Not because they expected an answer, but because the act of speaking, of reaching outward, of encoding something true and human and carefully chosen into a form that could survive the journey, was itself meaningful. Was itself a kind of answer to the silence. Not a solution to it. Not a conquest of it. But a response. A gentle, considered, deeply human response to the fact of existing in a universe so vast it can make existence feel accidental and small. And here, if you let it, something softens. Something in the chest or behind the eyes, in whatever part of you responds not to information but to meaning. Because what Voyager represents, stripped of all its technical complexity, stripped of its trajectories and its instruments and its power systems slowly dimming across the decades. What it represents is an act of reaching. The oldest and most essentially human act there is. The same impulse that sent the first peoples walking across land bridges into unknown continents. The same impulse that built boats and pointed them toward horizons that offered no promise of a farther shore. The same impulse that painted animals on cave walls in the deep dark of the earth, not because anyone would necessarily see them, but because the act of making something that might outlast you is its own form of meaning. Voyager is all of those things. It is a cave painting launched into the stars. It is moving right now. As you read these words, as you rest in whatever stillness you have found, Voyager 1 is approximately 15 billion miles from the Sun and increasing that distance by another 38,000 miles with every passing hour. It is in a place so remote that the Sun, from its perspective, is merely the brightest point of light in a sky full of points of light. It is in a place where no human-made object had ever been before it arrived, and where none will follow for a very long time. It is cold there, in a way that temperature charts cannot fully convey, not the cold of a winter morning or a frozen sea, but the cold of a place where the sun's warmth has not reached in any meaningful sense, where radiation from the cosmic background itself is the dominant thermal presence, a faint and ancient warmth left over from the first moments of the universe, cooled now to nearly absolute zero, permeating everything, belonging to everything equally. In that cold and that dark and that silence, Voyager's instruments continue their patient work. Its plasma wave detector listens. Its magnetometer reads the gentle orientation of fields that have been shaped by galactic forces operating across millions of years. Its cosmic ray detector counts the high-energy particles streaming in from distant supernovae, from the violent deaths of stars in other parts of the Milky Way, particles that have traveled for thousands of years to pass through this particular point in space at exactly this moment and be counted by a machine the size of a small car built by human hands in the 1970s. The improbability of it is vertiginous if you let yourself feel it fully. And perhaps, here, in the particular softness of this hour, you can afford to feel it. There is nothing you need to do with the feeling. It requires no response and no resolution. It can simply move through you, like those cosmic ray particles move through everything, leaving only the faintest trace. Voyager's power is generated by the decay of plutonium-238, and it decreases every year. The spacecraft's designers knew this, planned for it, built the mission around it. Each year, Voyager produces slightly less power than it did the year before. Instruments have been switched off over the decades, one by one, as the power budget has tightened, sacrifices made to keep the most essential systems running, to preserve contact for as long as physically possible. There will come a day, perhaps in the early 2030s if current estimates hold, when the power will no longer be sufficient to operate any scientific instrument at all. When the transmitter will fall silent. When the signal that has crossed the solar system and beyond for more than 50 years will simply stop. And after that silence falls, Voyager will continue its journey in complete darkness, no longer speaking, no longer observed, no longer known to us in any direct sense. Just moving, just traveling, just carrying its golden record and its human fingerprints and the faint residue of every intention that went into its making, deeper and deeper into the dark between the stars, where no light has ever touched it, where no human eye could follow even if one tried. And yet, and this is the part that asks something of you, something quiet and patient, even in that silence, even after the transmitter has given its last breath of signal, Voyager will still be going. It will still be moving through interstellar space at roughly 38,000 miles per hour, a speed that sounds enormous until you hold it against the scale of what surrounds it. At that velocity, it would take Voyager nearly 73,000 years to reach the nearest star system to our own. 73,000 years. Let that settle into you the way cold water settles into stone. The civilization that built it will be unrecognizable long before it arrives anywhere. The language in which its mission was described, the culture that celebrated its launch, the very concept of a space agency, all of it dissolved into time, centuries stacked upon centuries, while the spacecraft drifts on in its perpetual, undisturbed fall through the galaxy. There is something in this that feels like grief, and something that feels like peace, and something else that has no name yet in any human language. Perhaps it is the feeling that arises when you truly grasp impermanence, not as an abstract idea, but as a physical, measurable, already unfolding fact. The interstellar medium through which Voyager now moves is not empty, though it holds very little. It is a thin, cold plasma, ionized hydrogen and helium, the remnants of ancient stellar winds, the slowly dispersing breath of stars that burned and died before our sun was born. It is quieter than any silence you have ever experienced. It is darker than any room you have ever sat in. The nearest source of significant warmth, our own sun, is now so distant that it appears as nothing more than a bright star. The brightest star in Voyager's sky, perhaps, but a star nonetheless, indistinguishable in kind from the thousands of others scattered around it. From where Voyager travels now, our entire solar system has shrunk to a point of light. Everything you have ever known, every mountain and ocean and human face, compressed by distance into something you could cover with the tip of your finger held up against the night. Carl Sagan wrote about this. He described the Earth, photographed from 4 billion miles away by Voyager 1 in 1990, as a pale blued, a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. He asked his readers to consider all the rivers of blood spilled by conquerors and kings, all the suffering and all the glory, all of it having unfolded on that almost invisible speck. He was not writing to diminish us. He was writing to expand us, to ask whether the scale of the cosmos might teach us something about ourselves that no closer view could offer. That photograph, taken at the suggestion of Sagan himself, with the camera pointed back toward home one final time before it was switched off for good, remains one of the most quietly devastating images in human history. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. And now Voyager has traveled far beyond even where that photograph was taken. It has crossed the boundary that no human-made object had ever crossed before it. The heliopause, that invisible frontier where the sun's influence finally yields to the interstellar wind, is now behind it, growing more distant with every passing second. Ahead of it lies something that astronomy has long theorized but never directly witnessed from inside: the true interstellar space, unshielded by any stellar influence, open to the full current of the galaxy. Instruments aboard the spacecraft have detected this environment directly. The plasma density changed. The magnetic field shifted. The cosmic ray flux, high-energy particles streaming from distant supernovae, increased significantly as the sun's protective bubble fell away. These are not poetic interpretations. These are data. Numbers radioed back across 23 billion kilometers of space, received by enormous dish antennas on Earth, decoded by scientists who have spent their careers listening. The signals arrive faint as a whisper, and travel at the speed of light, and still take more than 22 hours to make the crossing. When you receive a signal from Voyager, you are receiving something that left the spacecraft nearly a full day ago. You are, in a very real sense, reading a letter from the past, from a messenger already far beyond where its words were written. The sounds Voyager heard as it crossed that boundary, converted from plasma wave data into audio frequencies that human ears could process, were unlike anything recorded before. A rising tone, a shift in the density of the medium. Scientists described it as hearing the interstellar wind for the first time, a sound that exists not in air or water but in the thin charged fabric of space itself. When you slow your breathing and let the quiet of this moment find you, it is worth holding that image gently in your mind. A sound rising in the dark, a boundary crossed, a threshold passed that no instrument had ever passed. Before, and somewhere on Earth a room full of scientists sitting very still, listening to a place no human being has ever been, receiving a message sent from the edge of everything familiar, falling now into the silence the way a stone falls into still water, sending ripples outward through everything it touches, changing the surface of understanding in ways that are difficult to measure but impossible to ignore. There is a particular quality to that kind of knowing. Not the knowing that comes from reading a textbook or memorizing a fact, but the knowing that arrives when something real and physical and irreversible has happened, when the universe has demonstrated something about itself that it had previously only suggested. The crossing of the heliopause was not a theory confirmed. It was a door opened, and Voyager walked through it, slowly, without ceremony, carrying its instruments and its golden record and the accumulated intention of every human being who had pointed it in this direction and said, "Go." It is worth spending a moment with the golden record, here in the deep quiet of this telling, because it asks something of the imagination that very few objects in human history have ever asked. It is a 12-inch gold-plated copper disc, carried aboard both Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, each copy identical, each one sealed against the vacuum and the cold and the radiation of interstellar space. On it are sounds and images selected to represent the diversity of life and culture on Earth. The sounds of surf and wind and thunder. The sounds of birds and whales and the low patient rumble of a Saturn V rocket lifting from the ground. Music, Bach and Beethoven and Chuck Berry, a Navajo night chant, a Peruvian wedding song, a piece of Georgian choral music that sounds as though it was written for exactly this purpose, for exactly this kind of distance. And voices. Greetings in 55 human languages, including one from a child, a small voice saying hello in the dark, launched into space on the chance, the extraordinary and improbable chance, that something somewhere might one day hear it. The probability of that happening is vanishingly small. Scientists who worked on the project knew this when they designed it. Carl Sagan, who chaired the committee that selected its contents, knew this. The record was not sent because anyone genuinely expected it to be found. It was sent because the act of sending it said something true about the people who made it. It said, "We were here." It said, "We noticed beauty." It said, "We wanted to be known, not just to each other, but to whatever else might exist in the long patience of this galaxy." The golden record is less a message than it is a mirror, something humanity held up to itself at a particular moment in its history and said, "This is what we are, or at least what we hope we are," distilled and pressed into gold and sent outward with as much care as we could manage. And now it travels in complete silence, through a medium where sound itself cannot exist, carrying music that will never be heard by the ears it was made to reach, and perhaps that is the most quietly beautiful thing about it. The music continues, in a sense, even in the silence. The potential of it persists. It is like a song written in a language no one currently speaks, not lost, exactly, but waiting, patient, held in a form that outlasts the moment of its creation. The copper beneath the gold will outlast every building humanity has ever constructed. In the absence of any significant physical collision, the record could persist for 1 billion years or more. 1 billion years. The Earth itself is only 4.5 billion years old. The record will drift through interstellar space for a stretch of time so vast that the continents of Earth will have rearranged themselves beyond recognition, that the sun will have swollen and changed, that the stars visible from Earth tonight will have moved to entirely different positions in the sky. And still Voyager will be moving. Still the record will be intact. Still the child's voice will be pressed into the copper, silent and waiting, crossing distances that have no adequate name in any human tongue. You might find yourself wondering, as you rest here in the dark, what it means to make something that outlasts your civilization. The pyramids were built with this intention, to persist, to endure, to say to the future, something was here that mattered. But even the pyramids will eventually be worn to nothing by wind and time. Voyager will not. Barring a collision that becomes statistically improbable with every light year of open space it crosses, the spacecraft will continue. It will continue when the last human language has changed beyond recognition. It will continue when the last trace of every city ever built has dissolved back into geology. It will continue through the long dark middle of the galaxy, and perhaps out the other side, moving with the same quiet, unalterable momentum it has carried since the day it was released into the sky above Cape Canaveral in the late summer of 1977. There is a comfort in this, if you let yourself receive it. Not the comfort of resolution or of answers, but the deeper comfort of continuity, the knowledge that something human, something made with care and launched with hope, will persist long after all the urgency and noise of the present moment has faded into geological time. That the universe will carry it. That the dark between the stars, which can seem so indifferent, so absolute in its emptiness, will hold this small human thing with the same impartiality it holds everything else. The dying stars and the newborn nebulae and the ancient light still traveling from galaxies so distant they have no names in any catalogue we have yet compiled. Impartiality is not coldness. The universe does not reject what we send into it. It simply receives, and carries, and continues. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is more than enough. Let your body settle a little deeper now into wherever you are resting. Feel the weight of yourself against the surface beneath you. Notice how still the air is in this moment. How far away everything urgent feels. You are, right now, on that pale blue dot, on the mote of dust that Voyager photographed and left behind, and the same laws of physics that guide Voyager through the interstellar medium are the laws that govern the slow rhythm of your breathing, the faint electrical pulse moving through your heart, the quiet chemistry of a mind beginning to release the day and turn towards sleep. You are made of the same atoms that fill the space between the stars. Forged in stellar interiors, scattered by ancient explosions, gathered by gravity over billions of years into the temporary and astonishing arrangement that is you. You are not separate from what Voyager moves through. You are a version of it, organized differently, briefly conscious, resting now in the dark. The interstellar medium that surrounds Voyager is not featureless, though it appears so at the scale of human experience. There are regions where the density of particles increases slightly, where the magnetic field bends and folds in response to ancient stellar events, where the echo of a supernova that exploded tens of thousands of years ago can still be read in the texture of the plasma. Space remembers in its way, not with intention, not with consciousness, but in the way that all physical systems carry the imprint of what has happened to them. The universe is written in the present tense, but it is full of the past. Every measurement Voyager has ever made is a reading of history. History written not in words, but in particle density and magnetic field orientation and the quiet statistical pattern of cosmic rays arriving from every direction at once. Astronomers have used Voyager's data to understand something about the local bubble, the region of interstellar space in which our solar system currently resides, a cavity carved by ancient supernova explosions over millions of years, where the density of interstellar gas is lower than in much of the surrounding galaxy. We live inside a bubble blown by dead stars. We have always lived here. Our entire civilization has risen and fallen and risen again entirely within this vast carved space, without most of us ever knowing it existed. Voyager crossed its interior threshold and began to feel its edges, and in doing so gave us our first direct measurement of an environment that had previously been only inferred. It told us, with its instruments and its patient transmission of data across 2 decades of interstellar travel, something about the neighborhood of stars in which we have always been embedded. This is what exploration does. It does not always take us somewhere we can go ourselves. Sometimes it simply extends our senses, gives us new instruments with which to feel the shape of a place we cannot visit, cannot even fully imagine, but can begin to understand in the slow and cumulative way that science understands things. Piece by piece, signal by signal, year by year, The knowledge Voyager has returned is not dramatic in the way that discoveries are sometimes portrayed. It does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives as data, processed quietly by instruments and people in rooms lit by monitors, added carefully to models that have been built over decades, shifting the edges of understanding by fractions that eventually accumulate into something significant. This is the real texture of discovery. Not a single moment of revelation, but a long, slow brightening, like the way the sky does not turn from black to blue all at once, but graduates through 1,000 shades of almost light before the sun appears. You know this kind of gradual brightening. You have felt it in your own life. The way understanding sometimes comes not in a flash, but in a slow dawning, a quiet arrival of clarity that you cannot point to as having happened at any particular moment. It was already happening before you noticed it. It had been happening for a long time. And when you finally recognized it, it felt not like a surprise, but like a recognition, like something that had been true for a while, waiting patiently for you to catch up to it. Sleep works this way too. It does not arrive suddenly, though it sometimes seems to. It approaches gradually, softening the edges of thought, loosening the grip of the day, drawing you incrementally away from the surface of waking life and down into something slower and warmer and older than language. You cannot force it. You can only make space for it. You can only become still enough that it finds you, the way a small signal finds a large antenna pointed carefully in the right direction, the way Voyager's whisper of a transmission finds the deep space network dishes on Earth, across more than 22 billion kilometers of silence, arriving. Faint and precise and utterly faithful to what was sent, carrying its information intact across a distance that the human mind was not built to hold, received by instruments that have been listening for decades with a patience that borders on devotion. There is something in that image worth resting inside for a moment. The listening. The long, unbroken act of turning toward something distant and simply waiting for what it has to say. We are not often taught to wait like that. The world asks us to be quick, to respond, to fill silence before it has a chance to become uncomfortable. But the Deep Space Network has been waiting for Voyager's signal for more than 47 years, and the scientists who tend those dishes do not experience the waiting as absence. They experience it as relationship, as a kind of fidelity. You stay turned toward the thing you care about, even when it is far away, even when the signal is faint, even when days pass between meaningful transmissions. You keep the antenna pointed. You keep the receivers calibrated. You remain, in the most literal sense, in contact. There is a lesson in this that arrives without announcing itself. That the most important connections in a life are often the ones that require exactly this kind of patience. Not the constant exchange of information, but the sustained orientation toward another. The willingness to keep listening even when there is very little to hear. Even when the signal is almost too faint to distinguish from the background noise of the universe. Even then, you keep the dish pointed. You keep the frequency clear. You do not turn away. Voyager 1 is currently the most distant human-made object in existence. No other artifact of human civilization has traveled as far from the place of its making. It has crossed the termination shock, where the solar wind slows abruptly as it meets the pressure of interstellar space. It has passed through the heliopause sheath, that vast turbulent region where the two mediums press against each other in a long, slow negotiation. It has crossed the heliopause itself, that final boundary, and emerged into something genuinely new, a region of space that belonged, before Voyager entered it, entirely to the stars. And still it moves. Still it carries its instruments, however quieted. Still the golden record rides along in the dark, undamaged, patient, indifferent to the cold. The cold of interstellar space is almost impossible to hold as a felt reality. Temperatures out there approach 2 or 3 degrees Kelvin in the regions farthest from any stellar heat, just barely above absolute zero, the theoretical floor of temperature, the point at which molecular motion itself nearly ceases. At absolute zero, entropy reaches its minimum. Time, in a certain sense, runs out of things to do. The universe at absolute zero would be a place of perfect stillness, of total arrested motion, and while that state is never quite reached in practice, the interstellar medium comes close enough that the difference is almost philosophical. Voyager moves through a cold so complete that it would kill a human being in fractions of a second, not by freezing in the way we imagine freezing, but by the immediate cessation of every biological process that depends on warmth. And yet Voyager persists in it. The spacecraft's own internal components generate a small amount of heat from the radioactive decay that powers it, and this is carefully managed, and the spacecraft is insulated against the void. It carries its own tiny warmth through the absolute cold of the galaxy, like an ember carried in cupped hands through a winter that has no end. There is something in that image that feels like the human condition itself. We carry warmth in a universe that does not provide it freely. We generate it from within, from the slow decay of whatever fuel we were given at the beginning, from the attention we pay to each other, from the small sustained fires of love and curiosity and care that we tend against the cold of everything that does not notice us. We are not native to the dark. We were made for something warmer, closer, smaller in scale. And yet here we are, oriented toward the largest questions, sending our instruments and our music and our voices outward into space, reaching for contact with something we cannot name, keeping the transmitter running for as long as the power holds. The power does not hold forever. This is the truth that Voyager teaches most quietly, most insistently, beneath all the data and all the distance. Everything that was built will eventually fall silent. Every signal will eventually fade below the threshold of detection. Every ember, however carefully tended, will eventually release its last warmth into the cold and become still. This is not a cause for sorrow, though sorrow is a reasonable response. It is simply the shape of things, the arc that every physical system follows from its beginning through its long middle to its ending, an arc so universal that the universe itself is believed to follow it, expanding and cooling and thinning over timescales so vast they make even Voyager's journey seem like a brief afternoon errand. And yet within that arc, something extraordinary has happened. Something improbable enough that it deserves to be held gently in the mind before sleep takes you. In the 4.5 billion years of this planet's existence, in the 14 billion years since the first matter cooled enough to form, consciousness appeared. Awareness arrived. Something in the universe became capable of looking at itself and asking where it came from. Something small and warm and briefly alive looked up at the dark and felt wonder, not just instinct, not just the mechanical response of a nervous system to stimulus, but genuine, reaching, aching wonder. The kind that builds telescopes. The kind that calculates trajectories and launches spacecraft and waits 47 years for a signal to cross the solar system and arrive, faint as a whisper, at a dish pointed carefully at the sky. This is what Voyager carries, at its deepest level. Not just data. Not just music and greetings and the sounds of Earth. It carries the evidence of wonder. It is the physical artifact of a species that looked at the dark and could not leave it unexplored. That felt the pull of distance the way some people feel the pull of water, an instinct older than language, older than civilization, written somewhere beneath thought in the oldest part of what we are. We did not have to launch Voyager. No law of survival required it. No immediate need was served by knowing the precise density of plasma in the interstellar medium. We did it because we are the kind of thing that does it. Because the question of what lies beyond the next horizon is one we have never been able to leave unanswered for long. And so the spacecraft moves, carrying all of this with it, the wonder and the music and the mathematics and the fingerprints and the child's voice saying hello, deeper into a galaxy that contains somewhere between 200 and 400 billion other stars, many of them older than our own, many of them circled by worlds we have not yet learned to see clearly. The numbers are too large to feel. But Voyager makes them feel, in some small way, because Voyager is real. It is physical. It was touched by human hands. It was assembled in a clean room in California by people who went home afterward to their families, who ate dinner and watched television and went to sleep without fully knowing what they had made. And what they made is now farther from home than anything humanity has ever sent, and it is still going, and it will still be going long after every person who touched it has returned to the same stardust from which they came. Let that be the last thought that moves through you before sleep arrives to take the rest. Not a thought that asks anything of you. Not a thought that requires resolution or response. Just this: you are here, on a living world, in a universe that is almost incomprehensibly large and almost incomprehensibly old, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, a small machine is moving. It was made by people like you, people who got tired in the evenings and felt lonely sometimes and laughed at things that surprised them. They made something that outlasted their laughter, that outlasted everything they worried about, that is outlasting them now and will continue outlasting every version of the world they knew. And aboard it, pressed into gold and copper, is a record of the best of what they heard and felt and imagined. Music that no longer needs a listener to be beautiful, greetings that no longer need a recipient to be sincere. The transmitter will fall silent in a few years. The last signal will cross the 22 billion kilometers and arrive at the dishes on Earth and be recorded and studied, and then there will be no more. The silence will not be empty. It will be full of everything that came before it, full of 47 years of data, of magnetic field readings and plasma wave recordings and the sound of a boundary being crossed for the first time, full of photographs of Jupiter's storms and Saturn's rings and the pale blue dot and the long black nothing beyond. The silence will be the shape of everything Voyager said, the way the space inside a bowl is defined by the clay around it. And after the silence, the journey. The long, unwitnessed, unrecorded journey through the interstellar dark, through the local bubble carved by dead stars, through the slow magnetic breathing of the galaxy, past star systems that have their own planets and their own silences and perhaps their own forms of wondering. Voyager will pass through all of it without stopping, without knowing, without caring in the way that only living things can care. But it was made by things that cared. And that is carried in it, inseparably, the way warmth is carried in stone long after the sun has set. You can let your eyes stay closed now. You can let the breath come and go without directing it. The day is finished. The distance between you and everything that needs doing has become, for now, as vast as the distance between the Earth and where Voyager travels tonight. Everything can wait. Everything is patient. The universe has been here for 14 billion years, and it will hold whatever you are carrying until morning. Somewhere in the dark, the spacecraft moves. Somewhere in the dark, the record waits. Somewhere in the dark, a child's voice is pressed into gold, crossing the silence between stars, carrying its small hello outward forever, into the beautiful and indifferent and endless and extraordinary dark. Rest now. The signal has been received. You are always going to be here, in this moment, in this quiet, on this pale blue dot, underneath these stars. Just this. Just here. Just now. Sleep.